Miss Cristobal with us as well, who's the 8th grade administrator and the other assistant principal. And we're going to get started on Camp Orkila 2023. Woo, woo. All right. I had the joy of going to Camp Orkila twice last year. One was on the world's longest burger run, where we went there and turned around on the same day. It was awesome. So I just want to go and say, as we are doing this, thank you. A trip of this magnitude with roughly 400 people on a bus, a ferry, on more buses would not be possible without you guys being able to come along and join us. So thank you for it. And I do have to say, as someone who's been Eckstein for almost a decade now, and seeing this trip evolve and develop and whatnot, the joy that it brings on the kids' faces. And, also looking last year when I had to sit there and say, hey guys, we're going back on the same day that we arrived, and to see them go and like the disappointment on their faces is good because the kids are excited for this. So thank you. It would not be possible without you, the chaperones there. So just so you know, communication structure when we're at Camp Orkila, you're going to have 2 admin with you, Miss Rose, the principal, and Miss Cristobal, our assistant principal. And then we're going to have roughly 15 school staff. That number is still changing and going up as we get that. And right now, we have approximately 48 chaperones. And so throughout the trip, we're going to have staff throughout Orkila, like the teachers and staff around, that if there's whatever need that you need to communicate to, they're going to be the most visible people. And then Miss Cristobal and Miss Rose, they're going to be there roaming around, but one of them is always stationed right next to the coffee pot in Camp Orkila. And I only say that because that's also where the nurse is located. It's right below the mess hall. And we're going to get to that coffee in just a second here with it as well. But so one of those admin will always be present there, but just to kind of give you an idea of a little bit of that structure and who we all have going. As a chaperone, here are some of your responsibilities that you're going to see on the screen. The first is to assist Eckstein staff in supervision of the students. Hey, that's the key thing, right? Is making sure students are supervised at all times. There should never be a time where a student is unsupervised on the trip. And then one of those areas, the transition points are key. That's going to be help with bus and ferry loading and unloading and making sure we student count, right? We need to count numerous times, multiple times in the same place. We always want to make sure we have our students. We don't want to leave a student in Anacortes. We don't want to leave a student in Camp Orkila. We don't want to leave a student, period. A student, that would be a very frightening experience for me as a student. So we just want to make sure we're always doing that student count. And then remain in the cabins with students overnight. That's another main responsibility of a chaperone. And then you eat together as a cabin during the meals, and then escort students to different activities per our daily schedule. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. And then also remember to have fun. And I can say, as someone that's been to Camp Orkila, I know some of you may or may not have, the view from that learning center, from that mess hall out across the water is absolutely phenomenal. It's fantastic. It makes it worth it. Tie that in with the laughs and the joys and getting to know kids and seeing them get to meet new people and stuff. It really is a powerful experience on many different fronts. Okay. What to bring. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I can say one thing that I learned last year: make sure you bring a towel. If you plan on showering at all, you will need a towel. I learned that the hard way. But anyway, I have a list here. You'll want to also bring a flashlight, a sleeping bag for on the bunk beds, a pillow, and then make sure when you get your stuff, it's clearly labeled, like your bag is labeled. Because what we do is we put it all into a U-Haul, and it just kind of gets stacked on a first come, first served basis, and then it gets all taken out and thrown onto the, not thrown, but set on the basketball court there. So when you have it labeled, then we know, hey, this is your stuff. Also, pro tip, as someone who's gone before, put your sleeping bag and pillow in a plastic bag. Then in case if it's raining, for example, when we're loading the truck, your sleeping bag and pillow are not wet. Okay, so that's a pro tip, because they are put in the back of a U-Haul, and it can get condensation and stuff like that. So, but a more specific list will be supplied during the parent meeting upcoming and to your student in paper and electronic form. Cabin assignments. Each parent chaperone is going to have a cabin. They're going to be assigned in that cabin, whether it's they have all different names, and I'm blanking on some of the names right now. But you'll sleep in the cabin with the students, and there's going to be approximately 10 students per cabin. Maybe less, maybe one or two more, but not more than that. It's going to be right around 10 or less. You'll have male cabins, female cabins, and all gender cabins. And so we'll communicate all those out to you in advance. All right, student behavior. And I know I'm moving quick. I'm doing it specifically because I do have a 25-minute time limit on this meeting. And I also want to be able to answer any questions should there be any. And I see there aren't any yet in the chat, but if you do, throw them in the chat. Student expectations on the trip. First, I do have to say students cannot be left unattended. Like what that means is, let's say you're in an activity and a kid says, hey, I need to go to the cabin to grab something. They need to have an adult go with them. Right? They cannot be left unattended, and they must be under adult supervision at all times. So while we're there at Camp Orkila and transit to and from school, school rules and expectations apply. It does include cell phones. Okay. Why? For a couple different reasons. Some students may have cell phones for medical reasons. Those students, they'll be identified to the chaperones. The staff know about it. And those students are also really good about their cell phone use and only using it for their medical reasons. The other reason no cell phones is oftentimes there's not service at Orkila, or it picks up a Canadian signal. So we just tell kids, unless you have a roaming plan and it doesn't work, and we know that our school phones work, and then we also have access to the Orkila phone for us as staff in case of emergencies and stuff like that. And then we will have a homeroom meeting with all the students to go over very specific expectations. And chaperones, I just want to let you know, you will be able to have your cell phones, and we will have charging stations for you. There is no power in the cabins, however, so you won't be able to charge overnight. Okay. All right. One of the tools that you guys are going to get is the students will have lanyards and the chaperones will have clipboards. On the student's lanyard, it's going to be like a name tag lanyard that goes on their neck. It's going to have their name, their cabin name, their bus number, what electives. So if we're out and about at Orkila and the kid's like, I don't know where I need to be, you can say, let me see your name tag. And you can look at their name tag and help them find out where they need to be as we're going throughout. Each chaperone will have a clipboard, and on that we'll have a ton of different information. You're going to have the daily schedule. You're going to have bus lists. You're going to have cabin assignments, even beyond your cabin and buses, right? Just in case we're somewhere and a student doesn't know where they need to be, you can help them find it. It'll have medication needs. This will be cabin specific, and it's not going to be details of like this student takes this type of medication at this time, but it will be, hey, this student takes a medication in the PM, or this student takes medication before lunch or after lunch or meals. And that's there to remind you to tell them, hey, go see the nurse, which will be right below the meal. It'll have elective lists, like which electives the students are doing. You will also be given a laminated cabin sign that we're going to be using and holding up on the departure day, which I'm going to get to here in a second. You'll get a map of Orkila and the grounds and like where admin will be sleeping for emergencies in the middle of the night. So you can go wake up Miss Cristobal because Miss Rose will be sleeping soundly. No, you could go wake up either of them. With that, should that be in with that, it'll also have kitchen patrol assignments because there's certain cabins that will be responsible for setting up for dinner and returning things for dinner, like cleaning up, bussing tables, etc. And this year we're adding activity while on the ferry from Anacortes to Orcas Island to help occupy some of those rambunctious middle school students that we have. And then one thing to remember for clipboards is as you have those clipboards, there is confidential information on them. So just be like, have them at all times, or if you place them down, upside down, right? Just know, hey, take care to try not to lose them and stuff because there is student confidential information on that. Yeah. Students with medications. We're gonna have a school nurse on the trip. Staff and chaperones, and you guys will help us carry stuff. Last year, Nurse Rob was with us, and he had like 3 or 4 boxes of stuff. It wasn't terribly heavy boxes, it was just bulky, right? And so he needed help carrying that. And so we'll have some groups on the bus that Nurse Rob is on, helping move those to and from the charter bus to the ferry, from the ferry onto Orkila buses into Orkila, and then in the camp area at Orkila, the teaching center they call it, which is directly below the dining hall. We'll have reminders for students to take meds, like I said, and then some students may self-carry EpiPens. Okay, and those may be indicated also on the medication list, but you'll have that on your clipboard with that. There'll be more information about meds in the next meeting as well. All right, now this is actually, most of the stuff that I covered has been general stuff that's going to be covered in our next meeting as well. Now, this is going to be chaperone specific stuff. And honestly, the transportation days to and from Orkila are the days where we really need the most help. Like those are the days where, hey, we need it throughout the whole trip, but on those days, the transport with the transitions are huge, and they can be chaotic. 6:45 on the day of departure, we need chaperones and staff here. That's to do a quick debrief, make sure you have all the information that you need to have, and get that briefed before the students get here. Because once the students get here, it's crazy. Students will be here, and then we have a form that you'll sign. It's the chaperone guidelines form. We'll have that for you to sign. 7:15 a.m. the students will arrive, and we have to depart Eckstein by 8 a.m. because the ferry leaves whether we are there or not. And so we need to get there and make sure that we're at the terminal so that we don't miss it. Because if we miss it, then it's a much longer wait on that. And we reserve a spot for our U-Haul on the ferry, so it's guaranteed to get on. And then we will be walking on as a group, all 400 people. So on the departure day, after you get your clipboard, we debrief. We're going to release you to the garden as chaperones, and you're going to hold up your cabin sign. And students are going to find out what their cabin is on that day, looking at their lanyard. And they're going to be looking around, and they're going to be like, all right, where's my cabin? Where's my cabin? Oh, there it is. And then they're going to stand there. And then what we're going to do before we even board buses, we're going to come around. We're going to have school staff come around and say, are you missing anybody from your cabin? Because if someone's absent, we need to know. And then you're going to take your cabin and you're going to load the bus when told to do so. And so we're on that transit. We're always going to travel as a cabin. And then We'll have staff helping load up the luggage and stuff into the U-Haul and getting it stacked so it all fits, and helping students find lanyards. So what we really need you to do is being there for the students to find their cabin group and then holding them there until we load the buses. All right, bus to the ferry terminal. This is a transition point that we need to be very aware of with this. So we have Eckstein staff that are bus captains. Chaperones and students are going to board the buses when instructed by Eckstein staff. And then chaperones, you need to take a head count of your cabin group on the bus and tell the bus captain, this is who I have. Even if you took it in the garden, you need to take it again on the bus, because we have had students go to a different bus, and we don't want to have to run around and delay our departure because the student is actually with us but went on the wrong bus. Sometimes intentionally and sometimes unintentionally. They just got lost, mistake, and they thought they were in the right line. So we need that head count twice before we even leave school. Once we're at the ferry terminal, we need chaperones and students to line up by cabin group along the fence on the right side at Anacortes. And so we have to stay in cabin groups when we're at the ferry terminal. It's not a, hey, just go roam around. We have to be very clear with the students on that. We'd have to keep them together, and we could be waiting there for an hour. We could be waiting there for half hour. It depends on traffic, and it depends on the ferry schedule, like if it's running on time or not. We have to get there early, however, because we can't get there at the last minute, right? And so we just need to have everyone, and no one boards unless we have everyone. And so when we do get there, one thing in the past that has happened is chaperones saying, yep, go to the bathroom. There's like a little snack bar thing at the terminal. Students can't go to it. They're not going to bring money, so they can't go to it, and they're not going to have time. 400 people trying to get snacks at this tiny place. It's incredibly inequitable, and they're not going to have time. Kids will be left without stuff. And if they go to the bathroom, they need to be accompanied, not in the bathroom, but to the bathroom. Because roaming around there, we can't have it. There's people at the terminal because it's open to the public. We don't know who they are, right? And so we just need to make sure our students are accounted for at all times at the terminal. Then when we get on the ferry, you're going to find a spot on the ferry with your cabin group. And you're going to make sure everyone, like, because you load together, like everyone's together, and we sit here. Once we're on the ferry, there's going to be a couple activities that the students do before they are free to roam around the ferry. And we'll kind of have a perimeter set up with Eckstein staff. So it's like free to roam in a certain area, not the whole ferry. Keep in mind, there's no ferry restaurant access for our students. Even if there is a galley or a restaurant operational, students can't access it. They're not to bring any money on the trip, and so they'll bring their own lunch. So the two things that they're going to do on the ferry once boarding, they're going to be with you. We have a ferry activity for them to complete, and I have a little bit about that here in a second, and eating lunch. And then also making sure our students are being respectful to other passengers. And if they're struggling, if Miss Cristobal, Miss Rose, a staff member says, hey, this student needs to sit with you, by you, for the remainder of the trip because of choices they're making, that the student needs to sit there. And then we'll have staff at the exits to make sure students aren't going places. 10 minutes before our arrival, everyone gets back into their spot. Students go back to those cabin groups. You need to do a head count. Again, anytime there's this transition, head count. Do a head count like 50 times. Head count, head count, head count. And then Eckstein staff will do the final sweeps. So if you're missing someone from your group, notify an Eckstein staff who will let Miss Cristobal or Miss Rose know. We'll do the sweeps through you continue to move off that ferry. Yeah, and I'm aware of the time. So this is an example of the ferry activity, and it's going to be like, hey, memorize the names of everyone in your cabin. Who's been to Camp Orkila before? Talks about the meals. What are your plan for your meals? Look at the map of Orkila. Where is the cabin? Where is it compared to the closest bathroom? Important information, right? In regards to the dining hall. So they kind of begin to get that spatial awareness of Orkila. And then some other discussion steps there. Once we get to Orkila, it's a pretty quick transition and there's not a lot of room. We come right off the ferry, and Orkila actually gets permission from the Washington State Ferries to back their school buses up almost to right on onto the ferry loading area. And so as soon as you come off, Orkila staff will be there and they will just be loading their buses until they're full. And then moving on. And half of our kids, there's about 3/4 to half that will be able to go on the first run of the buses. So about 1/4 to half of the students, I guess that'd be a third, stay at the ferry terminal because Orkila doesn't have enough buses for all of us. The buses go drop off, and about a half hour later, they come back and pick up the remaining. Okay? There is no space for students to roam in other places there. They're literally funneled straight into the buses or where to wait during that time. And we usually have one admin go forward and one admin stay back with that last remaining group. Okay. And then once we're there, chaperones and staff help unload the U-Haul. Orkila take all the students and go through a little orientation with them. So we have some adult time to collect ourselves and our belongings and help get all that organized. Meal times, you're going to be sitting with your groups at all times, and you'll have KP duties, and you'll have that on your clipboard. There are electives and nightly activities. Again, this is going to be going over this. You will not travel to specific cabin groups during electives, but instead you'll go to specific electives, and then they'll be intermixed at those electives. So you'll have kids from all over the different cabins. There's like archery and zip line, and I think there's a nature walk, and I forget there's a ball sport in like a little ring that's super popular, and I can't remember the name of it right now. And activities always flip-flop the next days. Okay. And then we do night checks. I wrote Jolene Anderson or me. That's from last year. It's going to be Miss Cristobal and Miss Rose, who will do night checks at 10 p.m. We'll have staff come around and do those. And students cannot never, ever be in another cabin. If it is not their cabin, even if it's their friend, they cannot be in there at any time throughout the day. And if you have any issues, reach out to us and we can help. And we will also have this PowerPoint available to you guys because I'm looking at the time. And in case of emergency, we do have a nurse. We do have a communication protocol, chaperones to staff, to the 2 admin. And safety is always, 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 always our top concern. I'm going the wrong way, sorry. And then a few other things. If you need support in the middle of the night or during the day, reach out to Miss Rose or Miss Cristobal. Middle of the night, they're right by where the nurse is. Yep, we know, hey, it's part of it. You'll also have their phone numbers, so you can give them a call if it's an emergency. And then just be strong with expectations, especially that first transit day. Like, nope, this is our expectation. We're with the group. And then, yeah, that's it. And then again, a huge thank you to you guys as chaperones. Questions quickly before we I know we have a few minutes. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, hi. You had mentioned that kids cannot be unattended. So in a situation where we have our cabin group and a kid needs to go to the bathroom or something, do we just flag down an additional staff member to go with the kid or stay with our group in order to have somebody with the kid at all times?
It depends on where the bathroom is, right? Yeah. So if it's you're sitting in your cabin and you're on like the little porch of the cabin and the bathroom's like, 20 feet away and you can see it, then the kid can go, right? But if you're at electives and they need to go, then yeah, there'd be a staff member or someone we kind of slide down and have them go and accompany. And then usually what I did, I'd say, all right, I have one kid that needs to go. Are there any other kids that need to go? And kind of if there's a group and then bring them back.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Any others?
But we are paired with another parent, right? So one can watch while the other escorts, correct?
Yeah, during the electives and things like that, yes, you're paired with many other people, and there will be Eckstein staff at the electives there also. And there's also Orkila staff. So Orkila staff is also you can supervise the children at the electives, at the students.
I'm sorry, I joined late, but did you say how many kids will be in each cabin?
About 10.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
What time are we supposed to be back on Thursday?
I want to say we got back last year, right about 3:45, 4 o'clock-ish, like right around the end of school. But that's always, there's a few variables there, right? The ferry, is it running on time? Is it not? And even as it's going, and then traffic and buses and how long it takes us to load the buses from the ferry to the buses once we on our return back. So I would say, we usually tell people right around just after the end of school. But that's given, different traffic and whatnot. Any other questions? All right. Oh yeah, can we park at the car and leave our school? Yes, we'll have a spot in our back parking lot for you to be able to park during those days. For that, we currently have construction at the school. So we have part of the parking lot fenced off. Let me, yes, we'll find a spot for you to be able to park here during that in our back lot with it if you need. If you're able to walk here or get dropped off, great. If not, yes, we do have spots and availability for you to park. All right, it's 6 o'clock. I know there's the parent meeting, which is going to go over a lot more specific information. It's not going to talk about some of the transitions that we talked about in here. If you do have any questions as a chaperone, feel free to reach out to any one of the admin team. And I can also, having most recently gone through the Orkila experience, field those answers too outside of today. So you can always reach out to Miss Dietering, our volunteer coordinator, and she can forward you to me, and I can answer any of those questions.